Hello, everyone. Since today's guest has lived in Shanghai, I thought it would be appropriate to start with a blooper of a sign in Chinese and also in English, which said very simply, and I don't know what the Chinese said, but it says in English, free yourself from the mystery of an existence, whatever that means. Today's guest is Tamar Hela. Currently living in Bali, Tamar is a California girl who's had adventures all over the world. She's lived in Shanghai for 5 years before Bali, and while in Shanghai, she worked with small and medium enterprises in Fortune 500s like W.L. Gore as a LinkedIn agency owner. While living in Silicon Valley before her move to Asia, she worked with Hollywood celebrities and Amazon best-selling authors, moonlighting in the publishing industry, and partnering with a media company owned by Bill Cosby's nephews. No matter the client, the size, or the company or the project, Tamar's main focus for her clients is to help them do what matters most online, to get the right message across to the right audience. She does this by using processes she's been testing out for over 16 years, along with what she calls an intuitive editing approach. This has helped her to become a six-figure copywriter in less than 2 years. And when she's not collecting shekels, you can find Tamar curled up with a good book on her next thinking about her next travel adventure or brainstorming a new business idea. Welcome, Tamar. Delighted that you're with us today.
Thanks for having me, Philip. It's great to be here with you guys.
Thank you. So to begin, your own LinkedIn profile headline says turning words into money, and you specialize in digital marketing. So you could perhaps tell us what kind of special techniques that you use to do that.
Yeah, okay, it's kind of funny, but my grandfather always told me two big and important lessons in life that I didn't understand until I was older and a little bit wiser in being an entrepreneur. And he always said, first, take care of number one. So that's a hard lesson for all of us, but I'm learning still how to do that. And the other one he told me was money talks, the other stuff walks. And at first I thought, okay, that's maybe a bit too capitalist for me, but I really understood what he meant because it's true. A lot of people kind of blah 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 and they try to use words to persuade, but it doesn't always work. And I discovered early on, especially when I started just having a natural gift, I guess, in school for writing and for editing and making things sound better, that I actually was able to persuade people quite easily. And I did this a lot through storytelling, through narrative. And so I kind of figured that out, I guess, as I really honed my skills more as a copywriter, as a storyteller, that if you use story and you tug on people's emotions, you have a buy-in. But it's always for a purpose. I don't think it's we should just talk to talk. I think money talks and the other stuff does walk. And for me, I thought, how can I add value to other people and show them how to be persuasive? Because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, or people try to embellish things, or they think they're telling a story, but they're not really giving much or adding much value. They're just talking to talk, or they're marketing to market because their boss has told them this is your budget and you need to get us more followers. So if you think about the end goal in mind, which yes, it's not always money, tangible money, but I think money can also equal like attention. You
Mhm.
know, if you don't have attention, like you have nothing. If you don't have an audience, you don't have a business. And if you're not making money or at least getting joy from presenting the things that you're presenting, to me, there's no point. And what's beautiful about words and about storytelling and tugging on people's emotions, which is the main part that I use for myself and for my clients, is this, yeah, just this ability to grab people's attention, to make them think about something in a different way, a different perspective, and to get them involved. Maybe they feel empathy, or maybe they feel compassion, or maybe they feel anger, whatever those emotions are. When you can tap into people's psyches and into their emotions, then you've got them because you've got their attention. And I think attention, especially these days with all the social media we have and all the reactivity, attention to me is everything.
It's very true. And tugging on emotions is the main way to attract people and to persuade,
Right.
of course.
Right.
Um, you mentioned in your LinkedIn profile about something called the intuitive editing approach. Is that part of what you're doing? Is that part of your process?
Yeah. So I actually was not trained um, fully as a professional editor the way most editors are trained. I did have academic training to a certain level, but the rest was all kind of self-taught. And through that, I discovered more about the structure of words. So let me give you an example. My first year working as a publishing director and editor in chief for Cosby Media Productions, I edited 25 books, 25 in 1 year. So that is the best crash course you could ever have because most traditional editors, and let's say the big five traditional publishing houses, they maybe will do 5 books a year because it's really intense. So multiplying that by 5 for me was huge. And what it did was it helped me almost like when you're learning a language, it helped me learn the structure of English almost like a song. And that definitely changed my perspective on editing because at first I was looking for grammatical mistakes or structural mistakes or okay, does this sentence construction match this one or is the plot accurate? Are there any riffs in the plot? Is the climax even there? Is there an introduction that's interesting? I had to go beyond that and just even think about, is this natural language? Is this the way that people talk every day? Is this the way that people think in their minds?
Hmm.
And so once I kind of kicked the rules to the curb because I had learned them so well, um, that became my kind of this, yeah, like an intuition, and I built from there. So now I've edited over 80 books in my career, countless articles and websites and all kinds of things. I've lost count. And I think my approach with using my intuition, because I'm so passionate about language and about making English better, because I think it's an ugly language. My passion and obsession to make English better, almost like a song, is what drives that kind of intuitive part. So I have been able to teach some former students a little bit about that. But it really is something that comes with like a practice eye. And that's why oftentimes even people I'm mentoring, they'll ask me to come in and do that kind of final polish, and give
Hmm.
it this Tamar touch. So that's a bit like of my intuitive editing approach.
Very interesting. Thank you. I've also
Yeah.
edited many books and many 200-page technical reports and other articles and so forth. So I also love editing and good writing,
Yeah.
uh, good speaking, as you
It's
mentioned.
fun. It's fun when it's done well.
It's fun if you're sort of a nerd and a geek, and then you like it. A
Yeah,
lot of people don't, right?
it's
Like anything
true.
else.
And when it's not done well, it's extremely painful.
Exactly. I have edited billboards and menus, so I know
Oh,
this is
wow, how fun.
where my
So
mind
cool.
goes.
I love it.
Um, in digital marketing, which is your specialty or persuasive writing, um, are there specific techniques that people should avoid?
Something I taught my students a lot, kind of like these, I guess, like 5 pillars. And one of the main pillars is to be concise. Again, I think that when people want to be persuasive, maybe their first instinct is that it needs to be long-winded. When I was teaching, I used to teach junior high kids in Silicon Valley, and you ask them to write a persuasive speech, and it's like 3 pages long, which that alone is painful for them, and then they have to present it. I was such a different teacher for them because when I was teaching them English literature, I said, no, like I want your speech to be 1 page and I want you to be able to capture our attention and make us want whatever you're talking about in 5 to 10 seconds. And they couldn't get it until they went through it and I give them the structure.
Mm,
And then when they had to present to the class, it was so different than the years before with prior teachers that they started to understand, okay, you don't have to be long-winded to say what you want to say and get the result that you want to get. But
mm,
part of that is always grabbing attention, like in the first 3 seconds, because that's all we have. So it includes having an interesting hook, which is the same in fiction and nonfiction. And I think it also includes like always having some kind of call to action, even if it's subtle. Either it can be a obvious call to action, you know, telling people what to do next, or it can be something that's kind of thought provoking and making them question themselves or their belief or what they assumed in the beginning and it's now changed at the end. So always like making people want more or want that thing, that idea you're talking about. That's what's really, really important. And the call to action can be just as challenging to craft as the hook, the attention grabber in the beginning. But with practice,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it gets easier and easier.
And I assume these same techniques apply to social media writing, whether for LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. You know, each one has its own rules, of course. You know, one wants more photographs and fewer words, one wants words and fewer photographs. But in essence, are these rules the same?
They're similar. I think I like LinkedIn the best, and that's why I wanted to specialize in it when I was in China, because there's more to say. And because it's such a business oriented audience, people do expect more. They take time to read on LinkedIn, they're getting their news on LinkedIn. Facebook is different. You know, you have people who now prefer videos similar to TikTok or visuals similar to Instagram. And people don't always read long winded captions on those platforms the way they do on LinkedIn. So you do have to think more visually. And if that's something that you excel in, then those are great platforms. And then Twitter is almost like these witty one-liners. You can really sell a lot, but you have to be so concise and super reactive on Twitter because once that thread is gone, most people aren't gonna go back and search for it. Whereas Instagram or other platforms, it's so much easier to find. Oh yeah, I remember that post. Let me look. So you have to think about the speed and kind of the algorithm and how that menu, that main page is going to be changing. So I would say, yeah, in philosophy, there's a hook, there's the essence of it, there's the call to action, but they're going to be structured a little bit differently on each platform.
When you're writing for an international business audience, how do these rules differ? If you're writing, for example, for Europeans versus Americans versus English speaking Chinese, how do these rules differ? How would you change your writing style?
The only thing I actually change is not using idioms.
Mm,
Not using idioms, and something I stick to, which not everyone is a stickler for this or believes in it, but to use hashtags to trend or to try to catch that algorithm, I'm only going to use 3. So for any client that I'm writing social media posts for on any platform, for the most part, I'm going to stick to this kind of rule of thirds. And then that's how I think about structuring any kind of message. It's like a book or like a play. There's an act 1, an act 2, and an act 3. And once you kind of structure those, I mean, beyond the kind of cultural context, like I think you can use a lot of the rules loosely in the same way. Asian audiences do tend to like a little bit less and they want more visuals. And I think that is a kind of a product of TikTok and TikTok or Douyin coming out of China. And that's kind of spread all around Asia. Whereas I think Europeans still value like reading more and being informed. So you definitely can have longer posts with them. And then for Americans, I think it just depends really on kind of the age group or the generation. I know like the younger kids, I call them, I'm almost 40, so they're kids to me. They're gonna also prefer the visuals, like the Asians, and the TikToks and all this. Whereas maybe millennials or boomers or Gen Z, Generation Y, the yuppies, they're gonna still take time to read a bit more because they still value being informed, but it's definitely more short form. You know, they're not gonna read a book. They'll read a post like this long and that's
Of course, we all
it.
know that Americans have the attention span of a gnat. Um,
Yeah, well, did you know like the new attention span record is what, 6 seconds or 7 seconds, and a goldfish is 1 second longer than us now as humans? It's pretty terrifying. That's why
this,
my future kid is not going to watch TV until she's like 2 because I'm terrified of that for her.
that's that's fascinating and very frightening, as you say.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned before about China, and I know you've taught digital marketing in China. How would you describe Chinese students or the teaching methods that you would use to Chinese students versus the teaching methods you would use to other nationalities or to in other countries?
It was really fascinating to teach at the university level in China because I had never taught that level in the US before. I had worked like with college kids and adults one-on-one, more for like academic enrichment in the US, but never in a classroom setting. And also the school I taught at is MNION, which is a French school. So it's their extension campus in Shanghai. So the children, the kids, they are a bit more worldly. They are more international than your average Chinese student. They all speak English very well. They all spoke French because they wanted to go study in Paris or elsewhere in France. And they were fascinated by the culture. And then, of course, they all speak Mandarin. So they came from this kind of product of private schools that still have a very Chinese government philosophy where when you're studying, it's to memorize the answers. It's not to understand what the problem is. It's to kind of regurgitate the right answer because the right answer in their experience is what passes, gets you a passing grade on the test, gets your parents to be proud of you, and gets your teachers to say, hey, good job, and you know not bust your chops or anything like for getting below like an A+. So I kind of had to work with that, and I was probably a very strange teacher yet again for them because I only taught bits and pieces of the actual textbook, and the rest, thankfully the director let me create my own curriculum, which I've done since the dawn of time of teaching. I taught for almost 20 years. So I brought in like all the different communication gurus from the US, and I would play short YouTube clips for them. I would have them then tell me, okay, what structure did you see when Dean Graciosi is talking about how to sell with words? Or I would make them present and pitch a business idea as a team. And I would say, okay, you are pitching to Givenchy or you're pitching to Lego and you're a marketing agency, you have to convince me as the fake marketing director why I'm going to hire your company, and you need to use storytelling to do it. So it was really weird for them because it was so based in philosophy and not a right answer that they were at first trying to give me the right answer. And I was like, guys, there's no right answer. And it freaked them out. Like they were shaking in their boots. But once we kind of created the guangxi, the relationship, then they trusted me more, and they actually started having fun with it. And what's cool is just a few months ago, a few of my former students, I didn't know I made such a big impression on them. they wrote to me and they were like, hey, we really loved your class. And they gave specific highlights. And they said, could you please write a recommendation letter? Because I'm applying for my master's course and it
Mm,
needs to be you because you were my favorite teacher. And I was like, okay. So, yeah, I think it was just me not being afraid to be myself while still respecting the culture, still making sure we got the learning modules done that the school wanted. But wow, I mean, those kids, they really surprised me too because they had a lot of creativity in them that
mm.
they were never allowed to express in school before. So it was really cool.
That's very interesting. Yes, because most cultures, let me change that. Most countries' education systems outside of the United States and Britain, perhaps Australia as well, um, they're all about rote memorization. The
Yeah,
entire curriculum is about, as you say, regurgitating whatever the teacher talks at you and
yeah,
regurgitating that for the exam. And it's not about critical thinking.
exactly.
A lot of American schools do teach critical thinking. Many of them don't. Many of them try to, but there's more of an emphasis here on critical thinking, which is why our societies are so different. Our
Right.
society is so different from China, for example.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very interesting. Um,
Yeah.
Similarly, business practices in China versus Silicon Valley when you worked there, how would you compare or contrast those?
Night and day. That's why now most of my clients, as an independent business person, like it's mostly, I would say 80% of my clients or 85% are American, just because I speak the culture. I understand it's more straightforward and there's more of a, I don't know, a willingness to collaborate if something's not up to standard or up to par. Whereas, for example, like I've worked with Ukrainian clients, and they'll just like fire you if something's off, and they won't give you a chance to redeem yourselves. But in China, it was really, we chose when we did our LinkedIn agency to not work a lot with the Chinese because first, you do need to really have this relationship created, which is called guangxi, which basically means that they trust you. Because if there's no trust, they're going to be completely skeptical or not even willing to talk to you. And it is easy in a way to create the guangxi. Like if you have a friend of a friend or someone in your network and they introduce and they like that person, then they'll be more keen to talk to you. But if they've never heard of you or there's no desire that you created that you're something great or you have a great solution or you haven't intrigued them, they don't care. Like you don't exist, especially as a foreigner. So we mostly worked with foreign companies in China doing their LinkedIn strategy, their LinkedIn marketing. And that was a bit easier. But because my business partner is French, we mostly worked with French and they're also skeptical too of like everything, or they're very like budget oriented or they want certain guarantees. So that was brand new for me as well. But we did present. We were kind of like these keynote speakers after COVID at a huge tech convention, and we had done so many on stage things and all these LinkedIn events by then. It was so natural for us to be on the big stage, and we really made a big bang because we gave them that goldfish attention span statistic and how you can like make yourself stand out on LinkedIn, and as a Chinese how you can bridge the gap internationally to get foreigners to do business with you. Man, afterwards the Chinese were like swarming us and taking our number and like making sure we were connected on LinkedIn, and they were so interested, and I had never seen that before. So I really learned too, like there's different ways you can create this guangxi or this kind of admiration and respect. So it was a lot of learning that I never took a course on cultural context with the Chinese and doing business. Never. It was just really like experiencing it firsthand and kind of navigating the waters and being like, okay, that works. That doesn't. This is not the right audience for us. This is. So it was really, really interesting.
Could you give for our subscribers, our listeners, and our viewers a summary of what are the points, what are the principles or the points of working with the Chinese?
Okay, number one, always create guangxi, the relationship. That's what they care about more than anything. If they like you, they will listen to you, if not do business with you. So that means you need to know someone who knows them, or find a great way, or go to a networking event where they're going to be at, and just kind of like start creating the relationship. And it can take time. Number two, like even if things are, it doesn't matter if something's said in word or in written form, they will change it. They will change it and it's going to be okay. Like to them, it's not about integrity. And so for me as an American, integrity and respect are my biggest core values. And if someone goes against a contract, I get so pissed off. But they like, that doesn't mean anything. Like there could be a big red, stamp from their company on it, and they will change it because they're going to change it to their liking. So you have to, number three, be super, super flexible if you're going to be there. And then number four, if you're going to do anything that's non-service based, especially like manufacturing, import, export, you better have your feet on the ground there, or somebody you really trust, because a lot of times people get screwed over by their manufacturers, or the quality is not good, or this and that. That happens a lot. And so you really need to make sure like you have some kind of eyes, ears, feet on the ground, making sure that things are going well. So that's why a lot of people too will partner with like a foreign owned company in China that kind of does consulting, and they're this middle man between the like a US business, let's say, and a manufacturer. And they're making sure that things are getting done well, but also they give the client like a guarantee, because if you just do it directly with someone in China you don't know, there is no guarantee. If you try to go after them legally, good luck. Like, good luck. Like, even with so many trademarks and stuff that have been registered in China, for example, like I think it was Michael Jordan who got screwed over by the Air Jordans because a Chinese manufacturer copied them, and like they couldn't sue them because they couldn't reach them. So things like that happen, and I don't know, it just is what it is. They don't care about copying. And to me, it has nothing to do with integrity. It has to do like with, they want to make money, like that's their priority. And they will do things to win no matter what in the end. Not all are like that. I do have some really lovely Chinese friends who are, I feel, are more westernized and care about that. But yeah, there's just, it's different. And I don't say it's right, I don't say it's wrong, I just say it's different. And so that can be quite a shock if people have never experienced business in China before. It's so different than Korea, it's so different than Japan. Totally different.
Very true. Very, very true.
Yeah.
One final question about digital marketing before we close. Um, to get to the top rankings of Google is very difficult if you've got a common word like school or printing or something like that. It can take over a year. Is there a way to short circuit that process, either in English in the United States or abroad?
Yeah, I think abroad, the more local platforms, they may not be as saturated in the local language. So it may not take as long, and you still have to do your SEO research and in that. But in English, there is something that actually I have tried before that works pretty well. You can see results within 6 to 8 months instead of a year. So first of all, you do need to do your keyword research, which is what's called SERP. And you can use tools like,
What does this stand for? The CRP?
oh gosh, search engine ranking something. You are really testing me. I'll have to Google that later because I do know, but not at 10 p.m. at night.
Right.
but it's called SERP for short. So SERP. But basically, it's a quick SEO research and it's going to give you like the saturation of what people are searching for. It's going to give you not just the main keywords like school, education, paper. It's going to dig down a bit into niches, which is what you want, because it's really super hard to rank in even like single word common words. Okay. So what you want is long tail keywords, which are basically short phrases that are still related to like this mother keyword, but it's niched down a bit. And when a certain long tail keyword has less competition, according to your research, that's what you can start putting into your content. So I shortcut this. I never guess and do all this crazy research. I've used tools like Surfer SEO, RFs, or Phrase is one of my new favorites. And I get a quick snapshot of like on Phrase, for example, the top 20 competitors as of like right now. So I know what they're writing about. I know what the long tail keywords are. And Phrase is going to tell me what I should focus on in order, like when I'm writing, to optimize above like a middle grade. The other thing is quantity. Yes, you need quality, but quantity also plays a role. So, what I last experimented with, which may not be relevant this year because I'm not quite sure, we're still rolling into the year, is if you have a baseline of 120 blog posts, that also helps with your ranking, because what it does on the Google algorithm is it's saying, hey, Google, this person is not a one-hit wonder or just like writing 5 blogs a year. This website actually has valuable content, and a lot of it with a lot of these keywords, so that when Google crawls your site, it's going to index it better and you're going to start showing up better in results. The other thing is, it's kind of interesting. Like Google used to ding you if you had AI generated content if it was copy pasted directly. Now, because they want to include their own kind of open AI thing in their Google search, they are like, wait a minute, we can't slam people for this anymore. So they're kind of like, I guess, making it easier for people to be encouraged to use AI generated content, but you need to go back and edit things, insert any keywords, and you need to make it sound a little bit less formal because AI tends to write without contractions. So add in contractions, put in anecdotes, put in some narratives, change up the beginning structure, and Google is going to love it. And I use things like I'm checking with uniqueness or plagiarism checkers to make sure that the content is no less than 96% unique. So Google's going to look for that. And then the last thing is how long people linger on your article or your content. Google wants to see how long people are hanging out on your website. So if you create interesting content and you have great visuals, people are more apt to read it. And that is going to make Google rank you higher. And the thing is, and the problem is, the algorithm changes so fast these days, probably every 2 weeks, that the Google engineers couldn't even tell you like tips and tricks about hacking the algorithm anymore because it's just too fast. So the number one thing really is that, like, did you write something or present something that's good enough that people will linger more than 30 seconds? And if you've achieved that and you have a bulk of it, you're probably going to start ranking faster than taking a year to do it.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much for those
Yeah.
very insightful
Yeah.
tips. Is there
Yeah,
anything
you're
else you'd
welcome.
like to add before we close?
It's just been a pleasure to talk about a few different things in my international experience with you. Like, these are questions people have not asked me before. So it's been a real pleasure. And yeah, if people want to have never come to Bali like you, I really encourage people to come and visit. It's really beautiful, and we're getting into dry season now. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. For the benefit of our listeners and viewers, I wanted to draw your attention to a new section on our website, on our podcast website, which is underneath the contact information of each speaker. And these are additional links. So, for example, a link to get a quote for translating or interpreting, a link to a marvelous children's book called The Dancing Pancakes, which teaches young kids not to smoke, drink, or do drugs, and also has a wonderful song by the writer-composer Joe Coleman. There's other business information from a company called Rainmakers Forum, which tremendously can benefit our subscribers. And in addition, there's a website called igicworldwide.com, which is a new venture for anyone who has incurred property damage or auto damage or personal injuries, for you to be, it's an intake center to be linked with a lawyer who will fight your case and get you, in most cases, a far higher settlement than the insurance companies will offer you. And you don't have to speak English. Our company, Auerbach International, will translate and interpret between the client and the lawyer, and you don't have to pay anything up front. And finally, this has been your host, Philip Auerbach of Auerbach International, and I certainly hope you will join us next week for another wonderful edition of Global Gurus and their stories of international business. Thank you.